So today we are starting with the kidneys, okay? And if you know already in the section all that there are two kidneys present in our body, one on each side of the vertebral column, and they extend from T12 to third lumbar vertebra, okay? And the right kidney, as you know, the right kidney is slightly lower than the left kidney because the liver on the right side. But as we take the respiration, deep inspiration with the descent of the diaphragm, both the kidneys move down about 1 inch, okay? And the color, if you see the color of the kidney, they are reddish brown in appearance, and they have a convex surface, convex border, concave border, two borders, two poles, superior pole, inferior pole, two surfaces, anterior surface and the posterior surface. And left kidney, it is also said that the left kidney is slightly nearer to the midline as compared to the right kidney. Now if you see the relations of the kidney, if you see relation of the kidney, they are different anterior relation of both the kidney on the right as well as on the left side. If you see the right kidney relation and the organs which are related with the kidney, some of them they are in direct contact with the kidney, and some of them they are separated by the presence of the fold of peritoneum. The blue colored area, they shows the presence of the peritoneum. Okay. Now if you see the anterior relation of the right kidney, at the superior pole we have the suprarenal gland. Then just below the suprarenal gland there is the fold of peritoneum which separates the kidney from the liver. So anteriorly at the upper part we have the relation with the liver. Then in the middle part, if you see, this middle part laterally is related with the right colic flexure. Okay, right colic flexure, and towards the median side there is a relation of the duodenum. These two structures, they are in direct contact with the kidney, so there is no fold of peritoneum. If you see the below of the inferior aspect, there is again a fold of peritoneum is there which separates the kidneys from the coils of the small intestine. Okay, so this is the anterior relation of the right kidney. Now if you see on the anterior relation of the left kidney, again at the superior pole, we have a crescent shaped structure, that is the suprarenal gland cell. Then below the suprarenal gland there is again a fold of peritoneum which separates it from the stomach and the spleen. Okay. Then below this there is no fold of peritoneum. The structures which are directly related with the kidneys in the middle part, we have the pancreas and the left colic flexure. Left colic flexure. Then inferiorly, same as on the right side, it is the peritoneum which separates the anterior aspect from the coils of the small intestine. Because in the middle of the abdomen we have the coils of the small intestine. So in this way you can say the anterior relations of the right and the left kidney. But if you see the posterior relations of the two kidney, they are nearly same. And if in the midline, as we have the vertebral column. Now on each side, if you see, there is the kidneys, they are related externally, it means from outside to inside. First is the 12th rib, 11th and 12th rib. But on the, if you see the diagram, the right kidney is related with the 12th rib only. But on the left side, the left kidney is related posteriorly with the 11th and the 12th ribs. Then further internal, if you enter after the ribs, you have the the two muscles which are lying anterior to the transverse processes and the rib. These are the, from medial to lateral we have the psoas major, then quadratus lumborum, then we have the aponeurosis of the transversus abdominis muscle. Further posteriorly, if you see, there we have the costodiaphragmatic recess. We have the rib cage, and along with the rib cage, the extension of the pleura down towards the lower margin, which form the costodiaphragmatic recess. So they are also lies posterior relation. Okay, and other than this, we have the nerves which are named as the subcostal nerve and vessels, and the ilioinguinal and iliohypogastric nerves, which are coming from ilioinguinal, iliohypogastric nerves coming from lumbar plexus. And the root value of them L1. So this is the posterior relations of the kidney, anterior relation and posterior relation. Now if you see the kidney, this has a facial covering. Facial covering. First of all, which is in direct contact, is the renal capsule. Okay. Then outer to this the renal capsule, perirenal fat. Okay. Then, or this is also named as the perinephric fat. This is a thicker layer. If we see, this is first is the then perinephric or perirenal fat. Then outer to this, what is the name? Renal fascia. Outermost layer is the para means it is totally surrounding the okay. Then so this is first we have renal capsule or the fibrous capsule, then we have the perinephric fat, and then we have the renal fascia. In between this we have the renal fascia, and the fourth or the outermost layer, it is named as the pararenal or fat. This pararenal fat, actually it is also named as the fat which separate it from the peritoneum, because it is a retroperitoneal structure. So this is the fat, amount of fat, large amount of fat which covers the kidney and separate it from the peritoneum. So these are the four layers of the fascia which covers the kidney. Okay, totally surrounds the kidney. So we have first capsule, perinephric fat, then we have the renal fascia, and then outermost layer is the perirenal fat. If you see the third layer, this third layer, this is the third layer which is named as the renal fascia. The renal fascia has two layers, one layer anteriorly and the other layer from the posterior aspect. Okay, these two layers they fuses laterally. Okay, then they are continuous with the what muscle aponeurotic fibers of transversus abdominis. The two layers of the renal fascia, anterior layer and from behind posterior layer, they meet at the lateral border, and then they are continuous with the fascia covering the transversus abdominis muscle, which is also named as fascia transversalis. Clear? We are not taking the pararenal fat because this is basically the fat which separates from the peritoneum. Okay. Main thing is the renal fascia, which has two layers, anterior layer on the anterior aspect and posterior layer. they meet at the lateral border, and then it continues with the fascia transversalis. Similarly, at the superior pole, the two layers meet and continues what we have above. Diaphragm. The fascia which lies over the under surface of diaphragm. Inferiorly, again the two layers meet and they continues and covers the ureter. Okay? Anteriorly and posteriorly they cover completely, surround the ureter. Towards the middle side or midline, it is said that the anterior layer continues with the vessels which are entering and leaving the hilum, and they might continue with the fascia of the opposite side. The anterior layer of the renal fascia of the opposite side, so they may continue with that. Okay? And the other side is the same, the two anterior and posterior layer with the continues with the fascia transversalis of the right side. So fascia, renal fascia, there is continuation of renal fascia. Anterior and posterior layer meet on the lateral border, continue with the fascia transversalis. Superior pole continues with the fascia covering the under surface of the diaphragm. Below it continues to cover the ureters, and towards the midline it continues with the opposite side. Okay? So this is the condensation of the renal fascia on the lateral medial side, superior and the inferior pole. But you should keep in mind the arrangement of these facial covering for the kidneys, from inside out or from outside in. Inside out is renal capsule, perinephric fat, renal fascia and pararenal fat. These are the four layers of the fascia which is covering the kidneys. Hilum, this is the region of the kidney which is named as the hilum, and from here we have the certain structures which enters the kidney and which leaves the kidney. The structures which are entering the kidney is the renal artery. Nerve also enters through the hilum, but the vein leaves the hilum and the lymphatics, they also leave the hilum. Okay? And the main structure is the ureter, which also leaves the kidney, which has the function of carrying the urine which is formed by the filtration process, and then it carries it to the urinary bladder and final excretion by means of the urethra. So what is the arrangement of the structures at the hilum? These are from anterior to posterior. If you see, it is written renal vein, then we have the renal artery. Renal artery, before entering into the hilum, it gives rise three branches. One branch comes which is named the two anterior branches. Just after the vein are the two anterior branches of the renal artery. Okay? Then we have the ureter, and after that we have the single arterial branch coming from the renal artery. In this way they enter and the vein comes out, and the ureter also comes out from the hilum of the kidney. This diagram shows the structures. When you take a longitudinal section of the kidney, then there are certain structures you will come to know which are present within the parenchyma of the kidney. As with other structures, the parenchyma of the kidney, they are divided into an outer part and the middle part. The outermost part is named as the cortex, while towards the middle of the part is named as the medulla. If you see the black to brown colored structure, these are the triangular shape, about a dozen of structure which are present within the parenchyma of the kidney. They are named as the pyramids. Okay, the pyramids, you can see they are present like this. This is the area of the cortex, and this is the area of the medulla. Okay. Now the pyramids, they are triangular in shape, and their bases, you can see this is the base, this is the apex. The base is towards the cortex, and the apex is towards the or between the medulla, but and you will see the division. Like this, the division of the pelvis, division, the wider, this is the ureter, and the upper wider part which enters into the kidney, hilum kidney, this is named as the pelvis. Okay, this further divides into major and minor calyces. So this division, the apex of this pyramid, it lies into the minor calyces. Okay, into the opening of the minor calyces, because you have done that the filtration of urine takes place from the pyramid, then into the minor and then major calyces, and finally into the pelvis. So this is the pyramid and base and the apex. Then there are some parts of the cortex that extends in between the pyramids. This is named as the renal column. Then from the apex of the pyramid, some part extends towards the cortex, which is named as the medullary rays. Okay, renal column and the medullary rays and pyramids. So you can say extending from the bases of the renal pyramids are the medullary rays, and the cortex and then medially between the pyramids, it is named as renal column. Then the most dilated part of the ureter is named as the, basically first when it expands, it is like a sinus. That's why it is also named as the renal sinus. And then renal sinus continues with the pelvis and then to the ureter. So renal sinus divide into major and the minor calyces. Okay, major and minor calyces. This is the division of the major and the minor calyces, and the region where the apex of the pyramid opens into the minor calyces. This area is named as the papillae. Papillae. Okay, papilla or papillae. Okay, so whatever been filtering, it enters through the papillae into the minor calyces, then to the major calyces, then to the sinus, and then pelvis of the ureter to the ureter. Okay. So structure, cortex and medulla. Cortex is the outermost part, and the medulla has the structures pyramidal shaped pyramids, which has the base and the apex. Base is towards the cortex, and apex opens into the minor calyces. Then between these pyramids, part of the cortex extends. It is named as renal column. From the bases of the pyramid towards the cortex is the medullary rays. Then if you see, the upper expanded part is renal pelvis. Then it further dilates and named as renal sinus, which further divides into major first and then minor calyces. And in the area of the minor calyces, the pyramids opens through an area which is named as papilla. Okay, so this is the whole structure which you must know that what is inside. We take a longitudinal section, what you will see in the diagram, that we have the papillae, we have the pyramids, renal column, medullary rays, minor calyces, then major calyces, sinus, and the pelvis of the ureter. These are the main structure, and you can see on the sides the covering of the kidney, which are 4 in number, which I said: renal capsule, perinephric fat, then fascia, and the pararenal fat. And you will see, if you go to the shop of a butcher and ask them to give the kidneys, okay, you will see when he do the dissection, whatever you call, and when we remove the kidneys, you cannot see the reddish brown color of the kidney. It will be totally covered by the fat, which is named as the pararenal fat, which actually lies behind the peritoneum, and posterior it is separating the kidney from the muscles, the psoas or the quadratus lumborum. So this is the God has protected this small organ into the 4 different facial envelopes. Now the renal artery which is going towards the kidney, okay, coming from the abdominal aorta at the level of T12, approximately T12, slightly above and below, but T12 vertebra. Now this artery, when it goes towards the hilum, first, as you know, it is dividing into 2 anterior and 1 posterior branches. Now as every branch which is entering into the hilum, it divides further because of the presence of these pyramids. The parenchyma is seen to be divided into certain areas or lobes. Okay, so once this artery entering into the hilum, first they gives rise to the segmental arteries, segmental branches of the segmental artery. These segmental arteries further enters towards the lobes. They are named as the lobar arteries. Their name is changing. It goes to the segmental, then the lobar arteries, and after that between the lobes is the interlobar arteries, and these interlobar arteries give rise to arcuate arteries, and finally these arcuate arteries gives rise to the afferent glomerular arteries. You know the structure of the glomerular, you have done in the histology and physiology. The glomerular arteries, if you see the cup-shaped structure, the arteries entering, they are named as afferent arteries. Okay, and after filtration, what goes out to the efferent. Okay, so these afferent arteries, how they come? From the renal comes the lobar, then interlobar, then segmental, then arcuate, and interlobular. One branch left is the interlobular arteries. Interlobular arteries finally gives rise to the afferent arteries. So by the size, they are becoming reducing in size. Larger here, then further reducing to the segmental, then interlobar, then interlobar, then arcuate, then interlobular, and finally the afferent artery. Arterioles are smaller size. You already know in general anatomy. Artery is a larger size, and arterioles are the smaller size of vessels. So as the division goes on, they are reducing in size. You can see in this diagram. This is one pyramid and lobe is shown. You can see first, which is this. What is this? Segmental artery. Okay, and this goes on, and no, segmental artery is before that. This is lobar, and then interlobar, and this gives rise to arcuate artery. Arcuate artery gives rise to interlobular artery. Interlobular artery gives rise to the afferent artery. Okay, this is the way, not the direct renal artery goes over here. The further division supplying the whole of this area medulla, and then reaching up to the area of the cortex where the glomeruli are located, gives rise to afferent artery. Clear? Again, segmental arteries which enters into the hilum. Then segmental is basically, division is like 2 anterior and 1 posterior. Okay. Then they each divide into segmental arteries. You can see in this diagram a large number of arteries everywhere. They are going. So they are named as the segmental arteries. These segmental arteries then gives rise to lobar arteries. Lobar arteries then gives rise to interlobar arteries. Interlobar arteries gives rise to the arcuate arteries. Arcuate arteries then gives rise to the interlobular arteries. Interlobular artery gives rise finally the afferent arteries. Clear? So this is the division how the blood from this area reaches to this area and the filtration process is started. And same is the process is the veins. Veins follow these arteries. Name just changes. In place of artery, we will write the veins. Okay? There will be the, if you go from outside in, we have the arcuate veins, then interlobular veins, then interlobar veins, lobar veins, segmental veins, finally into the renal veins. And these renal veins goes to the inferior vena cava. Now there is said, it is said that there is a size difference in the artery and vein. As the vena cava is on the right side, aorta is on the left side of the midline. The left renal artery is shorter than the right renal artery. Similarly, the right renal vein is shorter as compared to the left renal vein, which is longer. So this is the difference between the renal artery and the vein of the two sides. Lymphatic fluid goes to the lateral aortic lymph nodes around the origin of the renal artery. Then we comes to the ureter, and ureter, it is a, you can say it is a carrier. It is a carrier which carries the urine formed in the kidney towards the bladder for the final excretion. So this ureter is about 10 inches in length and it starts from the pelvis of the ureter, and then it passes down vertically downward, and it lies in front of the tips of the transverse processes of the lumbar vertebra, from where it is separated by the presence of psoas major muscle. Okay, so they are related, you can say, and posteriorly to the psoas major muscle. Okay, so this ureter will pass down vertically, and when it crosses the pelvic brim in front of the common iliac arteries, and then reaches towards the bladder, where over the superolateral angles, okay, which is nearer towards the base. So in this way, throughout its length, we will see that the ureter has 3 sides where it has slight constriction. 3 sides of the ureter are there which has constriction, and these constriction, which later on you will see, are the sites of the aggregation of the stones. First side, as you can see, where the pelvis continues with the ureter, then where it will cross the pelvic brim to enter. Okay, there will be second constriction. Third constriction will be when it enters into the urinary bladder. Here you can see first constriction where it continues with the pelvis, second where it crosses the pelvic brim, and third when it enters into the cavity of the bladder. So these are the 3 constrictions which is normally present in case of the whole length of the ureter. This also shows first constriction, second constriction, and the third constriction when it is entering into the urinary bladder. So there is this ureter continuous, yes. So Renal pelvis is funnel shaped upper end of the ureter, as you already know. Ureter emerges from the hilum, descend down vertically in front of the psoas muscle, which is separated from the tip of the transverse process of the lumbovertebral, enters the pelvis in front of the sacroiliac joint where we have the second constriction, and then it runs on the lateral wall of the pelvic cavity, where after that it enters into the lateral angle of the bladder where we have the third constriction. So this is the passage of the ureter from the renal pelvis up to the cavity of the urinary bladder. This is the diagram which you can see. This is the renal pelvis, and this is the area of the sinus, and then the continuation with the ureter. Now relation, if you see the relation of the, as the case of the kidney, the relation, anterior relation is different, while the posterior relation is same in both the kidneys. Anterior relation, it will be the duodenum, the terminal part of the jejunum, right colic, ileocolic vessel they are, because here we have all the small intestine and its mesentery in the middle, and the ureter, they are coming from like this. Okay, they are parallel. So these coils of the small intestine with the colic vessel, they are all anteriorly, nearly on the both sides, slightly different on the left side. But on the right side, we have the right ileocolic vessel, end of the terminal ileum, and the duodenum. They are all on the anterior relation of the right ureter. If you see the anterior relation of the left ureter, we have the sigmoid colon and sigmoid mesocolon. On the left side, we have the left colic flexure. Here we have the right colic flexure. Here we have the left colic flexure. And the common thing on relation anteriorly on both sides are the testicular or the ovarian vessels. Okay, testicular or the ovarian vessel, which are anterior relation to both the sides. Posteriorly, as we said, the psoas muscle, and inferiorly we have the common iliac artery. So these are the relations of the. Here you can see this is the ureter, the white colored structure is passing down, and the dotted line, actually they are showing these dotted lines, they are showing the structures which are related slightly to the anterior aspect. Arterial supply to the three parts of the ureter, they are different. Okay, the first part, that is the upper, we are divided into three parts. Upper 1/3 part, it is supplied by the renal artery, and the middle part, it is supplied by the gonadal artery, that is the testicular or the ovarian artery, and the lower one part, which is the pelvis, it is supplied by the superior vesical artery, which is a branch of internal iliac artery. Lymph goes again to the lateral aortic and the iliac nodes, and nerve supply coming from the renal, testicular or the inferior hypogastric plexus, testicular or the ovarian, depending on the sex of the person. This shows the blood supply, which is coming to the first part, upper part is coming from the renal artery, middle part from the gonadal artery, and the lower part, it is coming from the superior vesicle from the internal iliac artery. Then comes to the bag-like structure, which is present in the pelvic cavity, which is named as the urinary bladder. When it is empty, it lies whole within the pelvic cavity, but with the accumulation of the urine, which has the capacity up to 500 ml. Okay, but in extreme cases, it can accommodate up to 1000 ml. That is 1 liter of urine can be accumulated in the urinary bladder. What happened from the pelvic cavity? It ascends upward. Only the superior surface, which is normally covered by the peritoneum. Then when it pushes upward, the peritoneum moves back and it lies towards the abdominal cavity. That part is named as, what is this? And this is hypogastrium. So it reaches lower part of the abdomen into the region of hypogastrium. And when there is extreme accumulation, as I already told you, that when the bladder push up, peritoneum is moved back. There is condition of retention of urine. You can perform the suprapubic puncture, through which you can drain the urine from the bladder when there is some pathology in the urethra or any other condition. Now parts of the urinary bladder, if you see, there are parts which are named as the apex. It has a base, it has a superior surface, it has two inferolateral surfaces, and at the area where the urethra starts, there is slight constricture named as the neck of the bladder. So apex, base, superior surface, two inferolateral surface, and the neck of the bladder. Apex of the bladder, which is located just behind the pubic bones and connected with this the pubic bones. We have seen that the pubic bone posterior relation, we have the urinary bladder. Okay, and the part of the bladder which is lying behind the pubic bones is the apex, and it is attached or hold in its anatomical position by the means of a ligament which is named as, in the male, puboprostatic ligament. Puboprostatic, basically it is arising from the prostate gland, but it holds the prostate, so the neck of the bladder. In case of female, it is named as the, we will see the ligament here. They are named as the pubovesical ligament. Okay. Now, this apex, in addition to these two ligaments, the apex of the urinary bladder, it is held in contact with the anterior abdominal wall by means of median umbilical ligament, which is the remnant to the urachus. You have done in the embryology urachus, and this urachus gives rise to the formation of the urinary bladder. Okay, so this remains of the urachus, named as the median umbilical ligament. It keeps attachment of the apex of the bladder with that of the anterior abdominal wall, and it extends up to the umbilicus. So this is the median umbilical ligament. Then the apex, okay? The apex of the urinary bladder is kept in its position by means of the embryological laminate, which is named as median umbilical ligament. And when you have done in embryology, the urachus is the structure which gives rise to the formation of the urinary bladder. After its formation, some part of it remains over the region of the apex, which attaches this apex with the anterior abdominal wall, and it extends up to the umbilicus. So this is named as median umbilical ligament. So what is median umbilical ligament? It is nothing but it is the remnant of the urachus after the formation of the urinary bladder. Okay. Now this is base has, which is posterior, also named as the posterior surface. Actually it gives rise, it has the opening of the two ureters at its posterior superior angles, and anteriorly it has the exit of the opening of the urethra. So this is the area. Superior lateral angle they have the ureters, and the inferior angle they have the opening for the urethra. And on the posterior surface, you remember when we have done the seminal vesicle and ejaculate duct, they both structure, they are on the posterior surface of the urinary bladder, and superiorly what we have, if you remember, what is the fold of the peritoneum? In case of male, it's a rectovesical pouch, or in case of female, utrovesical pouch. Utrovesical and rectovesical. Okay. And so on, upper part. lower part, in case of male, there are the seminal vesicle and the ductus deferens, which opens into the ejaculatory duct.
Yes.
Okay, so these are in relation. So if you see the posterior surface, we can divide this posterior surface into two parts. Upper part we have the rectovesical in male and utrovesical pouch in female. Lower part we have the relation of the seminal vesicles and the ductus deferens on each side. Okay, see, this is the relation with the in case of male of the base. Then we come to superior surface. Again, superior surface, I told you. Clear? So superior surface, again, there is normally there is a fold of peritoneum, but with the accumulation of urine, as I told you, the peritoneum goes move and the bladder comes over the hypogastric region. And within, when it is empty state, peritoneum is there, so we have the coils of the small intestine which separated from the bladder by means of the peritoneum. This is the superior surface where in the empty state we have the peritoneum which separated from the coils of the small intestine. Okay, and this is the posterior aspect where upper part we have the small part of the pouch, rectouterine or the utrovesical pouch. Okay, and in the lower part we have the seminal vesicles and ductus deferens. Okay, they are in the relation of the two. Clear? Here this is the sagittal section, which again shows in case of female we have the between the uterus and bladder utrovesical. Okay, but in case of male you have the rectovesical. Rectovesical in case of male, utrovesical in case of female, between the uterus and bladder. Vesical referring to bladder. So utrovesical in female and rectovesical in case of male. Now, inferolateral surfaces. You know the structure of the pelvis. On the bladder is behind the pubic bone, and this area of the bladder, as I said, this side triangular in shape. Okay, this area of the bladder which is resting on the slightly behind the pubic bone and resting on the lateral wall. This is the inferolateral surface. That's why you will see the relation of this inferolateral surface is the part of the pubic bones, and more laterally when we go, we have the muscles. What are the muscles? The levator ani muscles and the obturator internus, which are forming the lateral wall of the pelvic cavity. Where is the obturator internus attached? Originally from the obturator membrane and from the margin of the obturator foramen. Okay, and then we have the pelvic diaphragm, which is the levator ani muscle. Okay, so obturator internus and the levator ani muscles are there on the inferolateral aspect, and more anteriorly we have the pubic bones. And pubic bones, the God has protected the structures because bone is always slightly rough, or you can say irregular. So to protect the soft structure like the bladder from the pubic bone, there is amount of fat is accumulated, which is named as retropubic pad of fat. Retro means behind, pubic means pubic area. Retropubic pad means a collection of fat. Retropubic pad of fat is present between the posterior aspect of the pubic bones and the bladder. Okay, so to protect it from the rough area of the bones. This we have done the prostotic ligament and the pubovesical ligament in case of female. Now, if you see the mucous membrane, when you see a cut section of the bladder, then you will see there is fold of mucous membrane. This is highly folded structure when it is empty. And there are when we open the bladder, then you will see that its mucous membrane is highly folded, and this highly folded structure, if you see inside the cavity, there are three openings present. One at the two at the superior lateral angle, one at the inferior angle. Now this mucous membrane between the two uretral opening, or the opening of the two urethra, there it is thickened and form a crest-like area. This is named as interuretary crest. Interuretary, that is between the opening of the two ureters. This is named as the interuretary crest. We will see later on. And this area, this is named as the trigone. Basically, this area below this is highly folded, and this is referring to the two ureters, and this area is named as the trigone. Like thrown into fold, mucous membrane is thrown into folds and disappear as when there is urine. Okay, and area of the mucous membrane of the bladder, which is highly folded, this highly folded area, it is named as the trigone. Now, trigone, and this trigone, okay, that trigone, you can say triangular area, highly folded area of the mucous membrane of the urinary bladder. And then, as I told you, there is a ridge between the opening of the two ureter, which is named as interuretary ridge. Then, when you will see in histology the smooth muscles which are forming the main muscular wall of the urinary bladder. This is, you have cut from the front. You can say the yes. Yes, this is posterior wall because it is covered like this. You have removed the anterior wall, and then you are looking at the mucosa or the mucous membrane in the cavity of the bladder. Okay? So this area is named as the trigone, and the ridge between the two opening of the two ureter named as interuretary ridge. Okay? It is nothing but when my finger is like this. Okay, it is entering here. You can see this area becomes prominent between the two. So this becomes it is a mucosa, but due to the entering of these two ureters, it becomes slightly prominent and ridge shape. That's why it is named as interuretary. So that it means you can, if you are entering from this opening, if you pass towards the left side, you will go towards the other opening of the ureter. That's why it is a landmark named as the interuretary. Otherwise, there is no other significance. But due to the entering, the mucosa becomes prominent over here, named as interuretary. And uvula vesicae, the smooth muscles around the opening of the urethra, it becomes tight. It becomes tight, and then due to this, it forms a sphincter-like area which is named as uvula vesicae. Okay? Uvula vesicae immediately behind the urethral orifice, produced by the underlying. What is there? What is present below this? Because this urethra from the urinary bladder, it immediately enters into the prostate gland. Okay? And which part of the prostate gland is behind? It is the median lobe. If you remember that diagram, that when the urethra is coming like this, here we have the median lobe. On each side we have the lateral lobe, and here we have the anterior lobe. Okay? So this pushes, you can say, above, and a ridge is formed around its opening, which is named as uvula vesicae. What is uvula vesicae? Yes, tell me. as the urethra starts from the neck of the bladder, it comes out, it enters into the prostate gland. Okay? And the part of the lobe of the prostate gland which is located below is the median lobe. Okay? So this median lobe slightly pushes the urethra, and due to which the opening of the urethra in the bladder, superiorly it shows a prominence which is named as uvula vesicae. Okay, uvula vesicae. You can say a small elevation situated immediately behind the urethral orifice, produced by the underlying median lobe of the prostate. And a muscular coat of the bladder, it is named as the detrusor muscle. And this detrusor muscle, when it surrounds the urethral opening, it is named as sphincter vesi. Now here you can see this area. This is the condition when the bladder extends from the pelvic cavity into the abdominal cavity. Okay? And this shows the area. This is the two ureters which are entering. Okay? And in between them there will be the ridge which is named as interuretary ridge. And this area, this is named as uvula vesicae, which is produced by the median lobe which pushes up. So this is the uvula vesicae, and this is the opening of the urethra. Blood supply coming from the superior and the inferior vesical arteries. Veins goes to the vesical plexus, which is formed and by the union of the small veins, and then they drains into the internal iliac. Lymph goes to the nodes around the internal and the intestinal. Nerve supply coming from the inferior hypogastric plexus. Renal pain. Renal pain usually not located to the kidneys, but it radiates towards the distant area which is named as the referred pain. Okay? How this goes to the referred pain or area? It is located in the region of the loin. Kidneys are located in the region of the loin, and this is the region of the flank, or the groin. The pain from the loin area goes to the area of the groin. How? Because of the distribution of the T12, the nerve afferent from the kidney, they goes or enters into the spinal cord at the level of T12, and from this area comes out the subcostal nerves, and these subcostal nerves supplies the area where the pain can be referred, that is into the region of the groin or into the regions of the posteriorly just below the rib cage. So this is how the pain is referred. Now there is another condition which is named as transplant. Normally you hear about the transplantation, where the transplant kidneys are placed. The most common site of the transplant kidneys is in the iliac region, on both sides. This is the very area where a space is located. So the transplant kidneys can be placed in the region of the iliac region. And when doing the transplantation, what you have done is the renal artery, because this is some other person's kidney. The renal artery is anastomosed end to end by the internal iliac artery. And the renal vein, it drains into the external iliac vein.
Almost like that.
Sorry?
Almost like that.
Most of the time, yes. This is done. Because iliac region is the area where you can put any foreign body, like the kidney, any other person's kidney, and it needs blood supply, which is most important for kidneys, and the venous blood. So you articulate the artery with the end-to-end anastomosis with internal iliac artery, and renal vein, it goes into the external iliac. This is right, so the commonest site of stagnation of the stones in the ureter, where the three constrictions are located, and the other types of kidneys, different types of kidneys which may appear embryologically or due to any failure of the design. Actually, what is the site embryologically the kidneys are formed? You have done embryology?
Yes.
Where they are start formation? in the pelvic region. Okay. Then with the growth, it ascends towards the abdominal cavity. Okay. Now when they are ascending, one or both can be failed to ascend into the abdominal cavity and remain within the pelvic. It is named as the pelvic cavity. Sometimes what happens after their normal position, lower bone meet each other, so they are named as a horseshoe-shaped kidneys. Sometimes both the kidneys they goes to one side, either on the right or on the left side, unilateral double kidney.
Can be normal?
These are all abnormal conditions. They are all abnormal conditions. Normal is to their position, one on each side of the vertebral column. Sometimes aberrant arteries appear, and these aberrant renal arteries, one part goes anterior to the ureter, one goes behind, and they can have a pressure effect of the urine. Their aberrant position. One is when the superior poles meet with each other, they are named as flower or cake-shaped kidney or the cake kidney. And other one is again the aberrant arteries. You can see it is coming from the aorta, abdominal aorta, and in the region of the neck of the bladder. Oh, sorry, neck, hilum of the bladder, hilum of the ureter, so that it has presses the ureter, and due to which the larger size is the accumulation of the urine in the pelvis. This you can see. This is the. So these are the some abnormal condition related to the kidneys. Then we have the abnormal condition related to the bladder. They are usually when urine is accumulated, it can be if the urine is accumulated more than the normal amount, is up to the 1000 ml, and there is no drainage. What happens? Some of the urine, if form its ball, can leak from the bladder into the peritoneal cavity. This is named as intraperitoneal rupture due to any cause. Okay. Second is the extraperitoneal rupture. This is due to the any kind of when you have urine and you are going somewhere. Unfortunately, there is some accident. The bony fragment can enter into the bladder and ruptures it, and the urine comes out into the peritoneal. They are named as the extraperitoneal rupture. And for retention, we perform the suprapubic aspiration. That's all. Okay? Clear? Suprapubic aspiration is the drainage of urine when suppose any patient develops rupture of the supinal urethra.